I slammed my fist on the table and shouted, "This is cruelty!" The entire HOA board froze. My neighbors stared. You could feel the tension crackle in the air. People weren't supposed to shout. People were supposed to sit quietly, take their punishment, nod their heads. But not this time. Not when it was about my dog. Hours earlier, I had walked outside to find a bright red notice pinned to my front door. HOA fine, $400 for violation, pet disturbance. I read it twice, thinking it had to be a mistake. My dog, Max, wasn't dangerous. He wasn't aggressive. He was a 6-year-old golden retriever who spent most of his time asleep on the porch. His only crime was barking. Barking when strangers walked by. Barking when the mailman came. Normal dog behavior. But according to the HOA, he was a nuisance to community order. And they weren't just fining me. They threatened to remove him. That's when I realized this wasn't about noise. This was about control. And I was done being silent. The truth is, the warning signs had been there for months. A family fined because their cat was spotted sitting in a window, a teenager written up for walking his pit bull without an HOA-approved leash, a widow threatened with eviction because she fed stray cats behind her house. At first, people grumbled and caved, but each week it grew worse. My neighbor Sarah was the first to break down. One night she knocked on my door, tears in her eyes, holding a yellow slip. "They fined me $300, she whispered, "for letting my parents' dog stay overnight." Her hand shook as she crumpled the paper. "They're treating us like criminals." And she was right. So I went to the next HOA meeting, clutching my own violation notice. I stood up and said, "Show me where this rule is written. Show me when we voted on it." The president leaned back in his chair, arms folded, that same smirk I'll never forget. "It's in the handbook. We updated it. We mailed notices." I looked around the room. Heads shook. No one had ever seen such a notice. His smirk only deepened. "If you don't like it, get rid of the dog." That was it. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about my pet. It was about dignity, about freedom, and I wasn't backing down. That night, I covered my dining table in papers, every email, every letter, every rule book I'd collected over the years. My wife sat across from me, worried. "They'll make our lives miserable," she said. But I kept digging. I knocked on doors. I asked neighbors. One after another, they pulled out their own violation slips. A man fined because his daughter walked her puppy on the wrong patch of grass. A mother fined because her son's hamster cage smelled too strong. A retired veteran fined for building a doghouse in his backyard. And when I requested official records from the board, what I received was a joke. Blank copies of rules, no dates, no signatures, no votes. It wasn't just pettiness, it was fraud. So I called for a meeting, not theirs, ours. I expected a handful of neighbors. Instead, over 50 people showed up in my garage, clutching violation slips, their voices shaking with anger. A young father said his child cried for days after the board threatened to take their puppy away. A grandmother sobbed, saying her therapy cat was labeled a disturbance. The stories filled the room like fuel on a fire. For the first time, we weren't alone. We were together. The next HOA meeting exploded. We marched in as a group, 50 strong. The board looked stunned, caught off guard. One by one, neighbors slammed their violation slips on the table. Sarah shouted first, then Mark, then a dozen others. The room roared. The board pounded the gavel, shouting, "Order!" But there was no order left. Finally, I stood up, my notice in hand, and shouted, "You don't own our pets. You don't own our homes, and we're done living in fear." The room fell silent. The smirk on the president's face vanished. For the first time, they looked scared. The fight spread beyond our walls. Word reached the local paper. HOA accused of pet harassment. Reporters came knocking. Officials started asking questions. The pressure built until the board cracked. Rules were repealed. Pet restrictions were loosened. A fair appeal system was introduced, and 3 board members resigned in disgrace. It wasn't perfect. They still held power. But they learned something they'll never forget. They couldn't bully us into silence. I learned something too. HOAs thrive on fear. They thrive on embarrassment. They count on homeowners feeling alone. But when we stood together, when we refused to back down, their power collapsed. They wanted me to give up my dog. Instead, they gave up their seats. So, now I'll ask you, if your HOA threatened to fine you for loving your pet, would you pay quietly, or would you fight back, no matter the cost? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you've lived through something like this, share your nightmare. Maybe it'll be the next one I tell. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because trust me, the HOA horror stories are far from over.